In April 1945, at a prisoner processing camp near the Rhine, 47 women of the German Wehrmacht Auxiliary Corps stood waiting in a rain-battered tent. Comprised of signals operators, clerks, and nurses, they had been captured 3 days prior during the Allied crossing. Expecting interrogation or harsh treatment, they were instead met with a confusing order from an American sergeant. "Show us your feet." For women like 23-year-old Ingrid and 19-year-old Greta, this request was baffling. They had spent months retreating from the Eastern Front, marching hundreds of miles in the same boots. Ingrid's leather boots had essentially fused to her skin after 4 months of constant wear. When the first woman, Hannah, finally pried her boots off, the tent was filled with the smell of infection and rotting leather. Rather than recoiling in disgust, the young American medics reacted with professional alarm. They immediately called for warm water, antiseptics, and sulfa powder, treating the enemy prisoners not as targets, but as medical emergencies. The condition of the women's feet was catastrophic. 90% of the group suffered from severe trench foot, frostbite, or gangrene. During the final months of the war, German command had prioritized movement over health, resulting in thousands of cases of debilitating foot infections. The American medical team, led by Major Harrison, began a triage process that prioritized the worst cases, utilizing supplies that the German army had not seen in years. The medics used massive quantities of sulfa powder, a high-value antibiotic, and fresh bandages. For the German women, the warm water and iodine were a shock, both painful and relieving. They watched in confusion as the Americans worked with assembly line efficiency but genuine care. When asked why they were wasting supplies on the enemy, a medic simply replied that they were patients now. The Americans were applying lessons learned from previous wars. Mobility equaled survival, and preventing infection in prisoners was essential to stopping epidemics within the camp. While others received treatment, Greta remained hesitant, refusing to remove her boots. When a medic finally insisted, the reason for her reluctance became clear. She had been walking on broken glass for 3 weeks. During the retreat, she had stepped through a shattered shop window and, fearing she would be left behind to face the Soviet advance, had continued marching. The medic, Private Johnson, spent nearly an hour surgically extracting 37 shards of glass from her feet. As he worked to stop the bleeding and disinfect the wounds, Greta noticed he was crying. When she asked why he shed tears for an enemy, Johnson explained that he had joined the medical corps after his sister died of a preventable infection back in Iowa. He had sworn never to let an infection kill anyone again, regardless of their uniform. For Greta, this moment of empathy from a man she had been taught to hate was incomprehensible. As the treatment continued, American nurses joined the effort, kneeling in the mud to wash the prisoners' feet. Among them was Lieutenant Mitchell. The intimacy and humility of the act began to crumble the German women's morale. However, Ilse, a 19-year-old former Hitler youth leader, stood up and denounced the kindness as a propaganda stunt, reciting Nazi rhetoric about American and Jewish depravity. The tension in the tent peaked when Ilse demanded the nurses show their true colors. In response, Lieutenant Mitchell calmly rolled up her sleeve to reveal a tattoo, A734. She was a Polish Jew and a survivor of Auschwitz, whose entire family had been murdered by the regime these women served. "I wash your feet," Mitchell told the stunned group, "because I choose to be better than what was done to us." The revelation that a Holocaust survivor was healing the feet of those who enabled her persecution shattered the women's worldview. Ilse collapsed in tears, the ideological walls finally breaking down. The psychological impact of that day resonated for decades. The simple act of foot care forced the women to confront the lies of the Nazi regime and their own complicity in its crimes. In the months following the war, many of these former auxiliaries, including Ilse and Greta, volunteered to work in an American field hospital. They transitioned from enabling a war machine to aiding in reconstruction, adopting the motto, "Healing knows no borders." In 1946, Greta testified at the Nuremberg Trials. She offered her account not as a defense of the German army, but as evidence of the stark contrast between Nazi ideology and the humanity she experienced at the hands of her captors. She recounted how Jewish nurses and American medics treated their injuries with dignity, a testament that helped define the moral victory of the Allies. Many of the women, including Greta, went on to marry Americans or dedicate their lives to medicine, ensuring the lesson learned in that medical tent was passed down to the next generation.